Hi everyone, and welcome to week one of the course, or module one, depending on what speed you're moving through the course. You might do the modules more quickly than week to week, but we'll see. This is one of the short videos I'll be doing each week to introduce you to the week's materials and to give you a bit of a pathway through what we're doing and to give you a bit of an update. The idea is not to in any way to replace the core reading in this course, but just to give you a bit of a heads up of what's important. And really, as an online and distance course, reading is the most important part of what you do, and it's important that you stay on top of the reading from week to week, you don't let yourself get behind, and that you ask questions about things that are unclear. So the format of the course is really, as I said, starts with the reading as the important part, and then each week in the study guides, which will give you further guidance to the material in the text. The study guides have a set of review questions. Now they're for self-paced review. You can answer them yourself and see how you went. There's no assessment connected to them. It's just a case of you being able to have a measure of how you're going for yourself. And there are tutorial problems that we'll discuss in the weekly Zoom sessions. Now the weekly Zoom sessions are not compulsory, but the strongest predictor, or one of the strongest predictors for student success, is engagement. So really it's been proven statistically that if you come along every week, you make sure you get engaged, you ask some questions, your chances of success are significantly higher than if you're someone who, and often for the best intentions, says, oh no, I'll catch up later, it's all right, because honestly, you never do catch up. I've been teaching for 20-something years now, and usually the students who get themselves into all kinds of trouble are those who, for real reasons, I mean, not out of laziness, or say, oh, there's these things happening in my life, I just need to put my study aside for a few weeks, then I'll catch up. Truth of the matter is, people don't catch up. So if there's trouble and you're struggling, please let me know, and we can work out. I'll talk to you and we can have some strategies about ways of dealing with the workload. But hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully you're, as adult learners and independent learners, you're already on top of all this stuff. But we're here to help if there are problems. Okay, so that's what the Zoom sessions are going to be about. There's the review questions in the study guides, the tutorial problems in the study guides. These aren't things that are going to be directly accessible, but they're all things that scaffold your learning. They're all things that guide you towards the issues that we think are important, that will then become important for your assessment later on. Now the material from the readings for this week is from the first two chapters of the text, which really talks about the structure of the legal profession and some of the important legal theories that will underpin the things that we'll be talking about later on. Now the legal profession is in a substantial period of change, and that's something we'll talk later in the course. The textbook really talks about the old 20th century legal profession. Things are going in quite different directions, but we don't want to swamp you with that just yet. We don't want to pull the rug out from under you until you've got a couple of weeks of study behind you. But the profession is changing. That's just a spoiler for the things ahead. The other things I wanted to mention was I will be over the next week setting up your account on Google Apps for Education, and that will be where you'll be able to place your portfolio. Of course, you can start working on the text for your portfolio now. That's fine, but it'll take a little time to actually set up all those accounts, and you'll get an email which will give you the account details and so on to log in. This is the first time we've used it, so I'm hoping everything will go according to plan, but if there are some hiccups, please persevere and please be patient, because this is the first time that we've done it. Now Google have very generously made all their Google business apps available to us for free, and there's some incredibly powerful things in there, and there are things that we couldn't possibly as a university purchase. So Google have generously let us have access to those. We're only starting to scratch the surface, so the first thing you'll be able to do is create your portfolio, and then we'll look at some of the more powerful features later on, and part of that will be when I figure out how those powerful features work as well. The other thing I wanted to mention quickly, and this is a theme we'll return to, is the idea of the learning community. I mentioned the importance of being engaged with your study earlier. It's also important to stay engaged in the learning community. There are different ways of thinking about education in the different times and periods in your life. And in the early part of your life, education was really about compulsory education. It was about going along to something because you had to. Because if you didn't go to school, the child catchers would come out and would grab you for being for being I want to say vagrant, but that's not quite the right word. A truant, for being a truant. The next idea of education is the idea of that we transition to is the idea of learning skills and learning knowledges, and that's part of the picture, but it's only a part of the picture. Because skills and knowledges are things that we learn throughout life, and they're things that are always updated, and particularly in law, legal knowledge changes quite dramatically from time to time. I mean, some laws have been around for years, hundreds of years, and they never change, and then suddenly overnight there's a court decision or a piece of legislation is amended, and suddenly everything changes. So we're less about teaching you content, because that content can change at any time. But it's more about equipping you with ways of thinking and ways of understanding and ways of knowing so that you can stay up to date. The next, I guess, level of thinking about education generally, but legal education specifically, is about building a professional network and constructing a professional identity. And this is where getting involved in law school projects, getting involved in volunteering, making sure that you're always on your best behaviour working in the learning communities, and that includes on Facebook. We see what happens on Facebook, and if people start running little whispering campaigns and things, which hopefully won't happen, but realistically does happen from time to time, we'll often have to remind you that you're a professional. You're going into a new profession, you're a novice professional, and we expect you to behave accordingly. And we will respect that as well. So if there are issues, come to us and talk about it. Don't start whispering campaigns on Facebook or all those things that people often want to do. And throughout the course, we'll look at some of the consequences of that too, because we are required to certify you as fit and proper people when you go for admission. And your entire academic history is relevant to that as well. So you want to make sure you stay a good citizen in that community. But even beyond that, it's a very important part of your professional career. The contacts you make here, both other students, with staff, with external people, with volunteer organisations, with internships, all those things are part of a really important professional network. And in some ways, that's, I think, the most important thing that you get. It's not so much that by having an education you are buying a qualification or you're buying a set of knowledge that's being transferred into your brain. What's realistically happening is you are becoming, you're entering a community, you're entering a network, you're entering professional life. And what the degree is a scaffolding. It's a structure for which you can construct your professional identity. And here we come back to the importance of the portfolio. And you can actually, become a functioning professional citizen within that world. All right, look forward to seeing you in the workshop this week.